Yeah. Tiny whoop time. Time to set up the brushless. This is the version 2. AcroBee brushless version 2. Look at that bad boy. I love those motors, little brushless motors. So, I'd like to go through my complete setup with you guys. Just unboxed it, so sorry I didn't film the unboxing. I couldn't help myself, so couldn't wait. But we'll go through. I just did a little bit of setup. I haven't changed hardly anything from the stock setup. I binded my receiver, created a model, and we'll go through that real fast. So let's get to it. The new BeeBrain. So what I'd like to get started with real quick, because I don't see a whole lot of these online, and I've had a lot of questions on getting the radio itself set up and really tuned nicely with, and I'm talking about your stick ends and your midpoints and everything. So let's get started with, I like to, what I'm going to do, what I did on this is I'm just going to make a new model real quick for you guys, and I know you can skip ahead if this part is boring, but I like to show you just because there might be something in there that, and when I do these, when I get a new one, I'm a little OCD about it, because you can copy, but I've ran into problems with that, with copying different models. You may not get all your auxiliary switches, and I know others have run into that, but I don't mind going through the setup to just to ensure that I have everything in here properly, and knowing if you're going to be a RC enthusiast, you should really know how to do this from scratch. So let's make a new model real fast. We'll get bind up, we'll go to Betaflight, and I'll show you how I get set up, and it flies. Amazing! So here we go. So we're going to go to an open spot here on our radio. We're just going to hold, create model. I'm going to go over to the quad. This is also going to depend on what version of OpenTX you have. We'll look in here and see what version I'm at here. I updated a few months ago. I generally go with the defaults on the channel assignments. So channel 1 is going to be throttle. That's good. That's what I want. If you want to change it, you press enter up and down. Page to go to the next one. Roll is going to be 2, which is aileron will be 2. So we're throttle, aileron, TA. Next channel will be pitch, and that is elevator. So TAE, that's fine. Channel 3. Channel 4 will be yaw, which is rudder, TAER configuration. Now let's keep paging. It's nice about these newer versions of OpenTX, they also show you in this process, they didn't used to do this, where they'll help you set up your a few aux channels anyway. So here I've got aux channel, what switch do I want aux 1 to be? Press enter on there, and I want it to be, mine to be SD. I like my top right to be my aux channel, my first aux channel, which I use as my arm, because I like it opposite my throttle. I can mess with my throttle and arm are separate. So click on that, and that switch is SD, as in delta. So let's go down, we'll plus to SD. Good. Now page to the next one. Aux 2, I'll make the guy on the left over here, which is SA. So it's already SA, I'll leave it there. We'll page. Aux 3, I like to be SE, the top one up here. So I'm going to select it, enter, and then plus down to SE. Probably can't see this very well, but hit enter on SE, page, and there's 4 channels set up, or 3 auxiliary channels. And we're just going to enter to confirm that. Long enter. There we go. So we have a model set up. We now select it. Page. We can name it here if we like. I won't go through that. You enter a name. We will need to go, instead of going to shortcut, I'll show you how to, you actually page down. We want to go to our radio. You will see internal RF and external RF. So the whoop we're just using, mine is the FR Sky model. So I'm going to enable in my internal radio in D8 mode. I run D8 because I don't use more than 4 aux channels, and I believe D8 is a little quicker, like less latency. D16 might have just a touch more latency. So I don't use more than, on a whoop, more than 4 aux channels, so 8 channels total is fine for me. And here is where you're going to bind. But let's go to our next pages here and just see there's our control channels, all of our aux channels. I might make a 4th one. And I'll just name it right quickly A. Exit out of the name, and then go down to the switch, and here you just hit enter, and then you flip the switch that you want that to be, that SG. So I want that to be SG. Enter again to accept, and exit out of there. Exit. There we go. I've made an aux 4, which shows channel 8 on my radio. So we've set up all of our channels there, basically. Very important part, though, and this is the part that a lot miss, and I want to really show you here, is your outputs. So before even messing with the stick ends in Betaflight and your midpoints, here is a good spot to get started. Channel 1, remember, is throttle. So you see the value up top here is displayed 988 US. That's the units, the increment on the throttle stick. So notice down below we're at 988, and up top we're at 2012. Yeah, it'll work, but that's not ideal what we want. This is where you adjust your outputs for your stick ends before you even get into Betaflight. So I want them to be throttle. I actually want it to be a little bit lower than 1000, and I want it to be a little higher than 2000, and I'll show you why. But the rest of your controls, roll, pitch, yaw, you want the bottom end to be 1000 and the top to be 2000, right on the money. I'll show you how to do that. And you want that first in your output screen, because many will go in and adjust things when you go into Betaflight, but this, at least in FR Sky, it's good to have it set here first. So let's start with our throttle. We'll select that channel and minus over to, see where it has your min and max. They're at 100, 100. We're going to enter on that, and that's the minimum, so the bottom. And notice, if I start taking away from that, actually add to it, but the plus, which is going away, now the numbers on the US start going up over here. And we're going to get that up to about 997. That's what I like it right there. So the bottom of my throttle starts at 997, and the top. So we're good with that. Now I'm going to go over to the max, enter, and we're going to start minusing away until we get to just over 2000. About 2003. There we go. And the reason you do that with throttle is because there's a min and max throttle check, and you won't arm unless you're under 1000. And same thing with you want it to be actually over on the top end just a bit, but only on throttle. And that's why, because of deadband and min and max throttle in Betaflight. So our throttle's good, 2003 997. Exit. Let's go down to channel 2 and enter on that one. I'm going to go over to channel 2. Remember, what was it? Roll. So it's aileron. So it's going to be roll left and right. So the min side is going to be left. See, it's at 988. No bueno. And then if we go all the way to the right, it's 212. See, those are too far out of whack. So I'm going to enter on the min value, and you have to kind of hold over to the left to see that. And I'm going to start hitting the plus until I get right at 1,000. There we go. 1,000 on the bottom end. So I'll enter on that to keep our min value. Move over to max value. Enter. And then move the stick that way. Say that 2012. And I know it sounds backwards, but we start hitting, or no, this one actually we hit minus. To bring that number down to 2,000. There we go. So now when we go left, let's enter to accept that value. 1,000, 2,000. Look at that. So our roll is configured just right. So let's exit. Now we're going to go down to channel 3, which is elevator, pitch, enter, and go over to min value. So down is going to be your min, see that at 988. And the top is going to be like 2012. So let's get the min. Oops, you have to select it first. Try to hit plus key until it goes up to 1,000, move too far. There we go. Enter, move over, enter, pinch up. Start hitting the minus button until we get to 2,000. Look at that. 1,000, 2,000. Enter to accept. And really the only other one we have to worry about is exit out of there, go down to rudder, select it. Min is going to be to the left, 988, same thing. Let's select it. Go to the left, start adding. Until we get to 1,000. There we go. Enter to accept. Go over to the max field. Yeah, right. Start hitting the minus button. You're kind of getting what's going on here. Should be getting this now. There we go. Enter to accept. So now you notice yaw left 1,000, yaw right 2,000. Let's exit. Now you can also do the same with your aux channels. Notice 988, 2012. But we're not going to go that far right now. So, but you'll notice now, and they're all really close to the same values. You know, all we did was kind of narrow the gap a little bit, because the reason you do that is because there's different gimbals that you can put in the radio. There's various different receivers that can go on the other side. So that's just fine tuning for that model. I don't believe there's anything else. If we page, there's not really anything else unless you want to get tricky with make some sounds and things. I will go down to my RSSI alarms and I'll turn the low alarm down to about probably 35, and my critical down to about 25 or 30. 25, see what that does. And we're not bind yet, so once you get bind, then you can give your source of voltage source. I don't think it has a barometer, so we're not going to have altitude adjustment, but we will have voltage source. So, and I think that's it there. Yeah, we're good. So that is set up to bind we've made a new model and we've configured our stick ends, so pre-configured anyway. So now it's time to bind and jump in Betaflight real fast. Fun, fun. Okay. Binding this guy's really easy. And we'll go back into the radio and do that step for you real quick. You just go back into menu. Excuse me, not menu. Or yeah, menu, not page. So go into menu on your model, hit page, and we're going to go down to that radio selection where internal, external RF. Internal RF is the FR Sky radio. External is if you have a module, like TBS Crossfire, but we're not running Crossfire on the wood. You can get them, but this one is not. So we're going out to our internal radio. There we are, to that D8, D16. You guys can run D16 if you want. I run it on D8. So you, on bind there, just hit enter. And now this is it's giving you its bind beacon. It's just sitting here, and you can let that guy sit there. And on your whoop, you just plug in your battery. Plug in a battery in the back. It's going to boot up, make some little tones. And what you're going to see, get a little pen, and inside here, in the top, very back, and you want to be really careful because right close is also where your main battery leads are soldered in, right here. So be very careful. Don't short out your main battery leads. But right back there, there's a button to hold down, and you just hold it down for a second or two. You'll see it flash. You won't get any acknowledgement from the radio, it's just beep, beep, beep. But that's bound, you'll see the red light in there. It's actually the RX will start to flash a little bit differently. It starts flashing really slower, I think. I think it was flashing rapid. So now we're going to unplug power from that, unplug the battery, press exit on the radio to get out of bind, exit again just to get all the way back to the main menu, shut her down. So you've shut everything down after binding. Turn the radio back on.
Welcome to OpenTX.
And just set it back there. Make sure all your switches and everything are where they should be. Throttle's down. And plug your whoop back in, and you should be bound up. Bound up. And I have a solid red light in there now, which I believe means our bind is good. Now, those auxiliary channels are set yet. I'm not going to try to arm just yet here because I want to jump in Betaflight and make sure, because if you've unboxed this, you don't know when to unplug. You don't know if, well, obviously we're bind there because when I unplugged the quad, my radio said telemetry loss. So, but let's plug into Betaflight because we don't know what it came in the factory as far as what's the ARM switch, auxiliary 1, aux 2, or whatever. Is there even one program in there? So let's jump in there. Now that everything's set up, right, Betaflight. So, what I like to do too, so we're going to plug in, and we've already bind. I'm going to turn the radio on. We'll set it there. I already have a USB cable plugged in. Plug in the AcroBee. USB on the bottom, right in the back there. back in the back side. So we'll plug in USB, standard USB micro cable. I like to grab a hold of it here, you know, don't press too hard. Should be easy in there. Okay. We're connected up. Now notice right away, let's look, our accelerometer looks good. It's probably already been calibrated. It's kind of tough with a USB cable to calibrate it. But notice our Betaflight target 422 BeeBrain version 2, brushless version 2 US. There's our configurator. Actually, everything looks good. We don't have any bad arming flags. It's good ports. This is default. I haven't touched it, so. Yard 1 must be our receiver. There's nothing else. Okay, we're running D-Shot 600. Normal motor direction. I'm going to leave it that way for now. That's the way they sent it. So some of the whoops I run reverse motor direction, and I like it, but let's not change anything yet and see what this does. Not going to mess with any of the idle. Interesting gyro and PID loop. I won't mess with that. Accelerometer. I put my name in there already. They already had 180 arming enabled, which if you have accelerometer you want, because it'll still arm whether it's upside down or if you crash. You can turtle. These work with turtle mode. So I haven't messed with any receiver stuff. I haven't changed any of this. FR Sky. This is all stock telemetry. Not going to do anything there. And notice here, this must be a custom value on the scale. It looks good. Well, I don't have a battery plugged in. It's just USB. But that's definitely not a Betaflight stock. Failsafe, I do the standard hold throttle and put a 10 in there. That's a Bardwell. Bardwell showed me that one in one of his videos. Watch his videos with Betaflight setup. That's a common. Gives you that little bit of time if you lose RF to gain it before it just drops out of the air. So pit tuning. I'm not going to mess with any of this. This has obviously been customized by NewBeeDrone because these are not Betaflight default pit settings. I turned my angle, my strength on angle and horizon down. Even though I don't use horizon, I keep them the same. I turn the strength, because I do use some angle mode indoor, but I don't like it to force me back to straight so much, so I turn the strength down. It's more forgiving, and I like the flying better, nicer turning when you're using angle mode. Transition, I don't think I messed with. Oops. And angle limit, they already had set at 85, which is good. So you can get a good angle. You can still dive or whatever in angle mode. I haven't messed with anything else. Actually, that's actually the only thing I've done in here is turn down the strength. And in rate profiles, I turned down. I like the Expo that they had in here. They had 0.15 already with RC rate of 1, and I just turned down rate Expo by about 2 notches. I think it was 0.65, so I turned it down a little. And I added a little throttle expo. They didn't have any throttle expo in there, so I just put a little bit just to make throttle not so touchy. Haven't messed with filters. Not going to do anything with that right now. Maybe later. So receiver. Make sure if you did the setup I did, where it's throttle, aileron, elevator, rudder, that you change this to the bottom TAER. And notice the stick low and high thresholds with my arming. So see, throttle is 996. Let's go throttle up 2003, right where it should be. I actually think I had it 997. I like that. I might turn it up another notch. Roll looks dead on the money. We could go up on the roll right just a touch, but everything looks really good. Yeah. That's doable. Notice it's dead on 1500 already, and that probably wouldn't have been if we didn't set up our stick ends already. That's where a lot of that comes from. set up your stick ends, your midpoints won't line up. So we're dead on. We're actually really good. Then to check your trim, many don't check this out either. That model down there, if it's moving around even slowly, you need to trim that out. The model is actually larger if you go into the rig profile settings over here. See how it'll move around. When you let off the sticks, if it drifts one way or the other, then use your trim. And it did just a little bit when I first plugged in. Let's see, let's go roll left and pitch forward one. See, just one notch. It's moving a little bit. It's actually rolling to the left, and it's pitching forward on its own. And what I like to do is set it there, just so you can see the arrow and line it up, and then watch what it does. See, it's slowly moving. So if yours is doing that, you adjust your trim in the opposite direction. So it's rolling to the left slow, so I'm going to adjust my roll pitch to the right. I'm going to switch that to the right one notch. And then recenter. Center yaw. And watch what it does. And see, we're slowly pitching forward. So we're going to pitch back on trim, pitch back on notch. Bring it back and watch what it does. Just let it sit there. See, it looks like dead on now. There's no movement. Just pointing forward like it should. And if I go do something, go do some rolls, move the sticks around, because you're also testing the sticks too. You might need new gimbals or gimbal springs. If when you come back to center like that, it doesn't stay. That'd be pretty good. I don't think I quite centered the yaw. There we go. Now we're dead center. Sure doesn't look like it's moving to me. Might be yawing to the right a touch. Let's yaw left.
Trim center.
Oh, yeah, we had yaw to the right a little bit. Now, there we go. See, my yaw was off just by one, but it was moving a little bit. You might not notice that flying, because how often are you just sitting there straight, just flying without touching anything? You may never, but if those are quite a bit off, that might be where, I've had messages, mine is drifting to the left or drifting to the right. It may not just be your trim settings, but also check the other things that we just did, such as your stick ends. Do your stick ends first. That's some of the mistake too, is you need to get your outputs on your stick settings set up first before you try to go do your trim settings. Then you trim. So now we've done a little trim. Now go back to receiver and look at where the sticks are. Right dead nuts 1500. Now if we roll left, roll right, look at that, we're almost perfect. I could adjust one notch on my roll right and pitch down. Yaw right is perfect, yaw left is perfect, and I could adjust the bottom end of my throttle up one notch. That's how close we are. Now see our auxiliary channels are actually perfect without doing any adjusting. Dead on. Number 4. Okay, now that our radio's good, modes. So this is your switches. Notice arm I set as aux 1. I did an add range, aux 1, and I put it all the way down to the right. That's so, even though it's a triple switch, that's kind of the way I would like to set things, is you have to actually go down twice. That doesn't do anything. Now we're actually armed. So it's not a dual arming switch, but you actually push that switch all the way down. And it might be wasting part of the spot, but it's the way I've done it for a while and I like it. So my modes are my aux 3, which is that top left. Default aux 3 is angle. Middle is horizon, bottom is acro, meaning it's open, nothing. There's nothing over the acro side, or the mode side. And I set my aux 2, which was the bottom left one, is the beeper, all the way at the bottom. Flip over crash is my aux 4, and notice I have aux 4 as a triple switch. I'm using it for middle is launch control, and then you would arm, and now you're in launch mode. I like launch control, it's fun. You bring that switch all the way down, now we're in flip up mode, and then you would arm, and now we're in turtle mode. Let's turn it all the way off. That's how I set up my aux switches. A little OSD. I liked how they had actually set it up. They had the voltage over on the left and some of your other goodies, your amp draw, and I put my radio and my timer and temp and name over on the right. And the warnings and alarms are right there in the middle, but normally there's, if there's no alarm going on, there's nothing there. So my rate switch, because I do switch, that's where you can tell, am I in angle, horizon, or acro? And then I have my VTX info in the very bottom, so I know what VTX channel and power that I'm on output, which is good for, if there's any questions or in any races or around other people, you're like, look at my OSD, it shows me I'm 25 milliwatt, R8 or whatever, there's no question. That's all. I don't like to get too busy. That might seem busy for some, but notice most of the data is down in the bottom left and right corner. So there's nothing up in the middle or in the top area. Those alarms aren't normally there, so there's actually a lot of open space. And I put it on NTSC. I leave it on metric. I think that's the only change I put it. They had it on auto, I think. I don't think I changed any of the warnings. I might have added RSSI. Oh, and I lowered RSSI warning to 20. And I didn't mess with anything else there. And I added a few of the post-flight stats. Like all my battery voltage info. Other than that, I have not changed anything else. I disabled black box, no logging. It just saves a little bit of CPU. That's about it. I did go into CLI. The only thing I changed in CLI was
Telemetry lost. Telemetry recovered.
it does a reboot when you do that. Launch settings. So get launch. I set launch control mode. Launch control mode equals pitch only. That way it doesn't, your roll doesn't mess up. I really like that because you can even put it in your hand and do a launch mode and pitch forward and back, and it won't do anything sideways. Even if you roll sideways on accident or yaw, it won't, it just ignores it. All it's doing is pitch until you take off. And other than that setting, I put an angle limit 65. So launch control angle limit. It's just launch angle limit. I put as equals 65 because at 65 is actually pretty steep. When it almost wants to fall forward if you go. And the reason I do that is so you can just push forward on pitch and just stop at 65. You can't go too far. I like that feature. I can put it in launch mode and just pitch forward. When it's there, I let off, pitch, and then just throttle when I'm ready to go. And it's really nice. So that's the only thing I've changed under there, and that's where Betaflight set up. Let's just disconnect. Close that. Disconnect our USB. And we'll just do a little test hover here. Let's cycle our radio as well. That's really, as far as setup, there's not much more. I might mess around with some filters and my rates a little bit more, but I think they've already done a lot of research into that. So, and I did fly 4 batteries out of it over the weekend. That's all I've flown out of this. Amazing. Outdoor, flip-in, inverted yaw spins. It was just awesome. So I don't actually know what I would change it right now if I would. But let's plug in the Nitro Nectar. That is the one thing about these though versus the brush models is 1S battery, wood battery, they do not last very long. I get about a minute of flight time out of one battery, but that's why they're 2S. So I got a 2S cable over there. We still need to try. So let's power up here.
Welcome to OpenTX.
That boot up. Let's plug in our AcroBee. It even makes ESC tones like the big quads. So if you guys can see that, we'll do it right here. We'll test hover. See what she does. So everything in. Arm. Ooh, it's making noise. There we go. And we're in angle, so I'll just leave it in angle mode. Look at that. So controllable, good and quiet. Such an amazing little flies so good. And be careful not to. One of the first things I did too is you want to, if you're used to flying these brush, you usually use quite a bit of throttle with brush, right? You have to. These you will throttle into the ceiling if you use too much. They do. They have a lot of. That was just not even half throttle, and they climb even just one battery. So very fun. I'm really surprised how well I did. Test our launch control. So launch control was in the middle of that one, and then arm. Working, but you need something to stop against. Yeah, I know I had to mess with that. I had to put a little piece of rubber or something on there, but it works. It's doing great. Let's try turtle mode. So our turtle mode there. Now we should just be able to, control each motor. Look at that. Turtle mode. Excellent. So fun. Let's go out and take a few flights, huh? Good on. I hope that helped anybody out there. Most important part, in my opinion, is getting those sticks configured and everything. So, and even that's why I like making a new model like that, because it kind of walks you through the steps of those. What switches do you want as aux 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And there you go, guys. I highly recommend them. I think barely $100. Was it $100 for this guy? Buy it and fly. And these Nitro Nectar batteries are a must. The 300 mAh Nitro Nectar wood batteries from NewBeeDrone. Must have these. But thanks, guys. Let's go out and fly.